I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
I've started many businesses since then, and I can tell you one thing for sure. When I've done it for the money, I've always failed. 100% of the time I failed. A lot of people will say, "James, what can I do to help you?" That's the worst networking you could do. You just gave me homework. I'm busy enough already. Now I have to think, what is empty in my life that this person who I have no idea what their skill set is, what they could do to help me. If you're well-intentioned, if you're not hurting anybody and you're well-intentioned, it all works out in the end. If you're always trying to provide value, no matter what happens then, you keep that network growing.
Will you tell us a little bit about your current income streams and then how you diversify? Because you're in a great position this time around. When you interview people, do you put a lot of emphasis on the very first question?
No, I try to catch people off guard a little bit in the very beginning and almost start off the podcast in the middle. For instance, we're rolling right now. This is going to be in the podcast. So I have with me today Jenny Blake, who author of the book Pivot. I'm so excited about it. I provided the blurb that's on the back, right, Jenny?
Yes, you did, front and center.
What did I say? I forget because I wrote the blurb like a few months ago.
Well, the part that I remember most is that I'm one of your favorite people, which makes me so happy,
Very
warms
true.
my heart, and that Pivot is the secret to gaining millions.
Excellent.
Here's hoping.
Yes, here's hoping. So, Jenny, I've known you for a long time, but you worked at Google for what, like 4 or 5 years?
5.5 years.
And then you've been involved in helping so many different businesses. You've given me a ton of advice, and I was so excited to read your book, Pivot. And now you're coming on this special bonus episode of the James Altucher. I can't even say my own last name. The James Altucher Show. To ask me about my pivots. So, and I'm excited about that.
Well, immediately when I read Choose Yourself, I felt like I got to know this guy. And because you kind of wrote the book I wish I had written. And so it actually had me pivot my own thinking, because I was going to write about a lot of the stuff you say about the daily practice. And then you already covered it.
So I totally ruined your life.
Exactly. Well, you helped me unpack what a pivot actually means. And that's what I'm curious to talk to you about, because in studying your background, it seems that you pivot every few years, which I think is the new normal now.
Yeah, I think, and you mentioned this in your book. I mean, what's the average amount of time? I mean, people used to stay at a job for like 40 years. Like my grandfather, probably your grandfather, stayed at a job for I think from literally like 1948 to 1988, he stayed at the same job. So, but now, at least in your book, you mentioned people stay at the average tenure is something like 4 or 5 years at a job.
And I think that's even overblown. Everybody I interviewed, from the time I first interviewed them to a year and a half later when I went to fact check, almost nobody had stayed in the same place.
And I'm wondering if this is like a very common, almost primal thing, because think about it, people didn't used to live as long, so they would have to kind of, and people were nomads, like, humans were nomads, so they wouldn't stay in the same place, they'd move around. I don't know how often, I don't know what the evidence is on how often people moved around, but think about it in terms of the arts. Like every great band, they kind of have their 4 or 5 year period where they produce all of their hits, and then the next 30 years they just tour. It doesn't even matter, like, okay, U2's a great band, and I'm not singling them out, and they keep putting out great songs. But honestly, all the songs we kind of all sing to ourselves are in a 5-year period they made in the late 80s, early 90s. And then the rest of the time they tour and they put out new albums, but I don't even know any of those songs. Same thing for like the Beatles had their, like, let's call them their special. So they might have had a 6-year period. Rolling Stones might have had a 6 or 7 year period. But for the most part, most bands have a 3 to 5 year period where they produce everything, all their master. And mathematicians, scientists is the same thing, a 5-year period. Businessmen is a 5-year period. And then after that, they live off of that.
Right. Or you have someone like Madonna who reinvents herself in these major ways.
Or Picasso.
Yes.
He switched genres, like went from cubism to more sketching to poetry to whatever. Every 5 years he switched.
Exactly. And the thing that I found is those who are most successful at pivoting are doubling down on what's already working. They're doing something.
What does that
There
mean?
is some common thread that is their anchor. So even when it looks like a 180 from the outside, most pivots that are successful are actually leveraging some strength or skill or asset from someone's past.
So it's not like I'm gonna pivot from doing what I am right now to like being a professional basketball player.
Well, for example, you're taking DJ classes.
Yes.
Right? So what would you say in your background relates to that?
Well, that's very interesting. I didn't think about that, but in the 90s, I did have a company that made websites for rap labels, and so a lot of the stuff I saw in the DJ class was related to music that I had personally made the websites for, 20 years ago. So there was that aspect. Plus, on this podcast, I've had a lot of people from that industry come on, so it's always been an interest of mine.
I would say, too, you're attuned to an audience and that you enjoy, whether it's writing or podcasting or in the future, hopefully we're all going to some set that you're DJing, that you enjoy intuitive kind of reading of a crowd and then creating something for them.
Well, also with writing, I wanted to figure out, like I'm always trying to improve my writing, but I figure right now in particular, I need to, not need is the wrong word, but I really want to pivot the writing. And I figure I need to speak other artistic languages, like let's say photography. I've been studying a little bit. DJing is another one. Even reading more poetry than I normally would. So trying to really understand and listen to other artistic languages to learn to how to do better the language I really want to pivot in.
In a broader sense, would you say you're at a pivot point right now?
Oh yeah, I'm totally at a pivot point in a lot of different ways in terms of writing and business and so on.
Yeah, it seems like, and we've talked even personally, that even for you, you can have a certain style of writing for a few years, but it seems like you're kind of ready for the next thing.
Yeah, like
even
for
if you
5
don't know
years,
exactly what it is.
I mean, from 2005 to 2010, I wrote mostly about finance and stocks and the world economy and everything. And then from 2010 to now, I write a lot about kind of the not the choose yourself genre, but I write a lot of stuff. Here's how I failed. Here's how I came out of failure. Here's when I was feeling suicidal. Here's how I came out of that. But there's only so many, and I did that. I write every day. So that's every day from 2010 to 2016. I'm writing about all these horrible and horrific things that happened to me and how I kind of came out of it. There's only so many horrible things that happened to me. I can't, and it's not like 1,700 horrible things happened to me that I have to figure out new, because I love the writing and because I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at it. I want to now figure out the next pivot to write about.
What would success be a year from now?
I think being able to tell stories in a new and fresh way, improved, where I feel like a new burst of energy, where I could pour my soul into it again. I feel like for 5 years, I was able to really pour my soul into what I was writing about. Now it goes back and forth a little bit because I feel I'm at this pivot point, and to be able to have that kind of soul and energy again into it. Not that I don't now, but it's a little more erratic now, I feel.
How do you know when you're at a pivot point?
I think I know, like I remember when I was an employee, the last time I was an employee at a major company was HBO, the television network. And I had a great job. I knew I enjoyed what I was doing, but I felt like making websites for a corporation had like a ceiling. There was only so much creativity you could pour into it because otherwise then the company takes over and the marketing department takes over. And so literally I'd wake up at like 6 and I would just lie in bed until 8 and I just didn't feel like going into work. I didn't feel happy about it, even though I loved my coworkers, I loved the job, I loved what I was doing. But also I had a business I was running on the side, building websites for other entertainment companies. So I was trying to decide, do I stay at the corporate job? Do I go to my new company full time? I really was torn in a lot of different ways. And I felt like I had reached my full potential in the main thing I was doing, which was my corporate job. So I felt I hit the ceiling at it.
I love how
depressed.
Yeah. Well, I loved how you described too, you want to pour your soul into something. And that at that point where you didn't really feel like waking up and had that kind of lack of energy, those are your signals, some of your signals.
Well, think about it. For any field you want to do, let's say, I don't know, I've had a lot of astronauts on this podcast, okay? So I'm just going to pick that randomly. If you want to be an astronaut, there's the astronaut who's going to pour his soul or her soul into it. And then there's the astronaut who's like, oh, I got to go to work again and be an astronaut. Who's going to actually get to go into space? The one who pours his or her soul into it, not the guy who's like, oh, again, I've got to like figure out those NASA controls. Like that person's not going to make it into space. Only the one who's really got that edge.
I'm curious about the finances of reinvention and pivoting for you, because I talk about having a pivot runway, and money does inform your pivot possibilities and when you can do it and how sharp of a turn you can make. And you've written very poignantly about going from 15 million to zero in 2008. And
zero in 2002, 2001.
And in 2000. And so I'm curious, what's different this time around that you're reinventing but not going to zero? What are you doing differently?
I think there's 3 skills to money. There's growing it, keeping it. Oh no, sorry. There's making it, keeping it, growing it. And I feel finally after so many times going broke, definitely I know how to make it. That I've done over and over and over again. But I've always failed to keep it. Now I know how to keep it, and I think I have a little bit of a sense of how to grow it. So now and I'm a little older. So now my pivoting can be a little bit more creative. I'm not just about figuring out like, oh my gosh, I'm back on the floor. I have 2 children to raise. What can I do now to support my family? I mean, I'm going to be 50 in 2 years. I know I don't look it, but you know.
Not at all. Not a day over 30.
Not a day over 30. I have some gray hair. But I feel like I've got to figure out other ways to pivot to enjoy life and business as well. So it's not like I'm just trying to do businesses that will help me tread water. I'm trying to do businesses that will, be something I fully enjoy and take pleasure in.
You said that you've learned better how to keep your money and grow it. What specifically?
Well, keeping it is very important. Like you learn how to, if you have some money, you learn how to not pour it all into either luxuries or kind of fad investments or bad investments. You learn how to diversify everything you do. So now I realize the purpose of having money is basically mostly to keep it in cash. And you want to just keep it. Like money gets you a certain amount of safety. And if you don't, you refer to a pivot runway, which gets me back to all the way to my first time pivoting, leaving the corporate job for a startup business. But now the runway, I have to take into account all the different things I'm responsible for on an annual basis, like, the most obvious being 2 children. So any kind of pivot I do has to take them into account. As you get older, you get more and more responsibilities. But when you're young, that's a great time to pivot on the financial way because you don't need as much runway. Now I need huge runway to do anything new.
Yeah. You have what I would call a diversified reinvention portfolio.
Definitely, which is key.
Yes, which is that can be skills, your network, and income streams. Will you tell us a little bit about your current both income streams and then how you diversify so that because you're in a great position this time around. Like you said, you're pivoting because it feels good and you want to grow and learn and diversify your creative skills. But you're in such a strong position, I think, because of how diversified your reinvention portfolio is.
Well, let's throw. I want to actually throw out another phrase there, which is I've diversified my no. So I can say no a lot more because I've diversified my different income streams and opportunities. If a new possibility comes across, or if a current one goes bad or needs more from me, I can say no to it. So not always, but most of the time. So right now, I make money from podcasting. I have an income stream from podcasting. I do this podcast and one other called Question of the Day.
So good.
Thank you. With Stephen Dubner from Freakonomics. And I write books. So, and not only do I write books, but I write nonfiction books, but I also have a children's book coming out. So I'm trying to diversify a little bit the types of books I have coming out even. So for possible multiple income streams, even within one income stream. I have 3 different businesses I'm involved in. One is where I kind of monetize some of my writing in the form of newsletters. Another is an angel investment portfolio that I manage. Another is with Kamal Ravikant, who you know. We're setting up a kind of a fund to invest in virtual reality companies.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, because I'm a big believer that virtual reality is a kind of technological pivot that's happening right now in this economy. And so those 3 businesses are income streams, and I mentioned books and podcasts, and sometimes I do speaking and consulting. I don't do that as much, but I used to do that a lot more. But it's always there. I've built up as Cal Newport, who wrote a blurb on your book, as Cal Newport would put it, I built up the career capital where I could always also fall back into consulting or speaking or whatever. So I've done a lot of those different things.
If you could pick one dream stream of income that you don't currently have, pie in the sky, anything is possible, what would you add?
Stand-up comedy.
Yes.
That would be the...
I
of
second
course,
that.
nobody makes money at that except Louis C.K. and like a few Amy Schumer, a few others. So it's not like that's going to be an income stream anytime soon.
Well, we didn't say it has to be your main one, but it can at least get started.
But also you can do things that aren't income streams.
Yes.
Not everything has to be an income stream. Like if you get a lot of pleasure out of something, I mean, a lot of people get pleasure out of playing Pokemon Go, and not everyone is making money at that. No, maybe one person out of 100 million are making money out of it. So
we could start the Pokemon Go podcast. Although I'm sure there's hundreds
there's probably
of them
already. Yeah,
true.
It's like how Minecraft. People don't realize how popular Minecraft was among kids. So if you really, if the bestseller lists were really made up of the best books, I don't know if this is true today, but this was true about 2 years ago. If the bestseller lists were really made up of the top selling books, 1 through 10 would be all Minecraft books. So at least 2 years ago. Now I don't know if that's true, but I bet you it'll soon be true about Pokemon books or podcasts about Pokemon Go.
Definitely. And what I want to highlight, what you said about virtual reality is that's what I call a pilot, small experiment. At Google, the motto was launch and iterate. Just try little things and get them out there. Even, Eric Ries writes in the Lean Startup, it's all about getting MVPs out. And what's cool is you're not putting all your eggs in the VR basket, but you are saying, I'm interested in this and I think there's a future here and I'm going to
Well, that's a great point.
dive into it.
I think this is the biggest. I think there were $3 trillion opportunities in the past 30 years. The first was the internet. The second was the App Store / smartphones. And the third now is virtual reality. So that's how strongly I believe this is a massive $1 trillion opportunity on the scale of the internet. And yet it's just one thing in a portfolio of things I'm doing because you can't put, like you said, you have to have a diversified, pivoting portfolio. So I think that's really important to know. So it's not like if it doesn't work out for me, okay, I've got these other things and life is short. I'm going to enjoy these other things as well. But I do think there's a huge opportunity here.
Where do you think artificial intelligence fits? Would you lump that with VR or put that separately?
Well, I mean, I went to graduate school in computer science. I majored in computer science, and my specialty was artificial intelligence. And one thing about artificial intelligence is it's people call everything artificial intelligence until they figure out how to do
Right,
it.
it's kind of a
And then
moving
it's like
target.
statistics or, like computer vision was artificial or yeah, computer vision is a great example. It was artificial intelligence until they kind of figured it out, and now it's just very sophisticated statistical models and so on. So, all of that's just ongoing computer science, academic work, and technology work. Whereas virtual reality, again, is it's an experiential thing. It's not just technology. There's going to be new forms of writing, new forms of content creation. It's hardware, it's software, it's fashion, it's commerce. So that's a whole other unique area. Whereas artificial intelligence is a very specific area of computer science.
I find mixed reality fascinating too. In the lumping that with VR, just this augmented reality.
Yeah,
that
like the whole
magically,
Pokemon Go thing.
Yes.
Look how popular
Yes.
the first real commercial example is. It became bigger than Twitter in like a week. So how big is that? And yet, again, I won't put all my eggs in one basket. What you said too about the small experiments. This happened to me in 2006, 2007. I was running a hedge fund, and I was trying to sell it, and I realized I couldn't sell it. Like a bank did make me an offer, but they wanted me to sign a 6-year employment agreement, and I realized why would they need me for 6 years? Because I had built no real equity in this business. Like the business couldn't survive without me. So I actually, instead of selling the business, I shut it down, and I started. I think we started 9 other businesses. My business partner and I, we started 9 other businesses, all website businesses, like a dating site for this, a website for this, another dating site. Started 9 different businesses. All of them failed, but we did them all little experiments. Like I would pay a few $1,000s to a bunch of developers in India, and we'd make this website. I'd try to market it. We'd see what caught fire. 9 in a row failed. And then on the 10th, we'd already spent a lot of money at this point. 9 of these businesses, like it was starting to add up. And my business partner was like, we tried 9 different things. Let's just get back to focusing on the fund. And I was like, no, let's just try this last thing. And we started a company called stockpicker.com,
Amazing.
which was kind of like a social media site for stock picking. At the time, this is how dated it was just a short while ago. I called it the MySpace of finance. And but then we very quickly, we got 1 million unique users a month, and we were growing, and different companies wanted to buy it. Yahoo, AOL. We were even talking to Google, probably even when you were at Google. I don't know. And then we ended up selling to TheStreet.com, Jim Cramer's company,
For $10 million.
Yeah, so it was
incredible.
It was a good success story. But that was after doing 10 small experiments, and you have to be able to experiment like that. It's really true.
And letting the market, I think a good experiment, and I talk about this in the book, answers the 3 E's. 1, do you enjoy doing this? And do you want to do more of it? 2, can you become an expert at it? And do you even want to invest that time, like the astronaut question? And then 3, is there room for expansion in the market?
Well, it's such a great point because, like I was thinking, like here I had been writing about stocks, and I was also a former website developer. So suddenly. And I was a hedge fund manager, so I was an investor
perfect
too.
confluence,
And
yeah.
so I took all my investing strategies from my hedge fund, and I took all my writing ability, and at that time, and I took my experience designing websites and put them all together to make the ideal site for a pivot, as opposed to, like, I'll tell you one of the experiments. It was so stupid. Like, remember the website Hot or Not? Like, you'd upload a picture and people would vote from 0 to 10 whether someone's hot. So I decided, I'm gonna do something like that. So I called it Smart or Stupid. And so you sign up, you upload your photo, and you take an IQ test, and then other people are supposed to guess your IQ. They see your photo and they're supposed to guess your IQ, and then it could be a dating site like how Hot or Not was. And first off, nobody was signing up for it. Second off, even my at the time 6-year-old daughter came up to me and said, "Daddy, isn't this site kind of mean?" And like I think she was feeling a little shy about taking the IQ test on the site. And of course, we wouldn't have 6-year-olds, but. And she was right. Like, and it was just a stupid site, but those were the kinds of experiments I was trying. Cost me only a few $1,000s to try it. I say only, that's still significant, and it adds up when you do a lot of experiments. But I was able to completely test out a business idea for,
Yeah.
let's say, $2,500.
And I just want to highlight that the one that worked is the perfect example. You asked earlier about what do you mean doubling down on what's working? You doubled down on these 3 areas that you had expertise. You combine them all together, and that was your launch pad, your point of leverage, like the pole vaulter pole that
Yeah.
catapulted you.
Let's stop to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
You can crush your fingers and all your toes during a data center migration. You can knock on wood, pluck a dozen 4-leaf clovers, or look to your lucky stars for a successful office expansion. You could hold your breath, shut your eyes, and say all the well wishes to help avoid cyber attacks. But none of that truly helps you. Because next level moments need the next level network. With the security, reliability, and expertise to take your business further. AT&T Business, the network you can rely on.
Well, and now thinking about it, like the first time let's call it a pivot. I mean, it's hard to say I pivoted. You could depending on how you define pivot.
Right.
Since puberty, I've been pivoting. But
yeah, that's a big secret. We always are.
But in 1997, when I left HBO to go to my real first entrepreneurial endeavor full time, that company, it was called Reset. We made websites for entertainment companies. So here I had a technology background. I had gone to undergrad and grad school for computer science. Plus I had been a programmer for many years. So I knew how to make from scratch a website. And I just was coming from an entertainment company. So now combining, I mean, I was even working on a TV show for that entertainment company. Like I really understood the entertainment business. So now combining those two loves of mine, I was able to make a company that made websites for entertainment companies.
Right.
So again, it really is this kind of combination of, what did you call the 3 E's? The enjoyment,
expertise, and expansion.
Expansion. So no company at the time had websites, so I was able to teach them why they needed to expand. I had expertise because maybe in 1994 there were 5 people in the city who knew how to make a website, and I totally enjoyed it. Like to be able to go to Warner Brothers and say, hey, I can make the website for The Matrix. Like, bam, who's not going to enjoy that? Like, I totally enjoyed it. So and then I've started many businesses since then. And I can tell you one thing for sure, when I've done it for the money, I've always failed. 100% of the time I failed when I've done it for the money and I didn't have the expertise. I remember one time I started a wireless software company. This is before smartphones. It was BlackBerrys were popular. I had a way of, I bought a company that built software for securely getting behind a firewall, like if you work at a bank and so on. And I had no clue how wireless worked. And some investor asked me, and I'm like, well, the wireless signal goes to the satellite, then comes down to the phone. And they're all in the room, they're all looking at me straight, and they're like, doesn't it go to the cell phone tower? It doesn't go to space. And I'm like, I had no idea. And I'm like, well, sometimes it goes into space, but just in special occasions. And I had no idea. They put $5 million into the business though, because that's how hot things were back then. But that business totally failed. Like it really was a failure.
So what this means is you're going to be a huge success at stand-up.
It could be. I don't know.
Because you're not doing it for the money.
I do follow. I mean, I've been... First off, when I was at HBO, I went to the Aspen Comedy Festival 3 years in a row. I've been following stand-up since I was a little kid. I've watched everything. I've seen everything. I go 3 nights a week to performances. Before this podcast, I watched Gary Goldman, Louis C.K., Amy Schumer, and Jim Gaffigan. Just my morning wake-up stand-ups. And I enjoy it so much. I hope I can and I've practiced it. You went to my one and only stand-up performance.
It was so funny. It was laugh out loud funny. I mean, I loved it. You crushed it.
So, but I've got to get better though, because I do recognize it's much harder than just doing one. So hopefully I can. I have to learn to stay up late, and then I can do more. That's my excuse. So you can't have excuses. Maybe I don't enjoy it as much if I'm coming up with excuses. There's like a kind of hidden E, which is excuses, which will destroy all pivots.
That's like the negative E that subtracts from your the plus 3 on the side of the equation.
I'm giving you all new things for book 2.
For book number 2,
negative
perfect.
E and the diversify specify your no. I hope you're writing these down.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be re-listening. James, why do you think that we resist and even try and prevent reinvention or pivoting at the same time that we crave it?
It's really interesting. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I'm also working on my next book. It's called Reinvent Yourself. Don't worry, it doesn't
Awesome.
contradict pivot. It'll probably just build on what you have. But I've had hundreds of people on this podcast, and I've had an opportunity to really see what people in every area of life have done to achieve peak performance. And it's like what you're saying. It's not necessarily people pivot from being an artist to being an astronaut. Like, people don't go completely in 180 degrees, but it's about building on what Steven Johnson famously calls the adjacent possible. So you see what ideas are already out there, what you're already doing, and you figure out how to mix and match and combine, and that's what you become good at. So if you're okay, I've written this before, like, if you're okay at, let's say, one thing and you're okay at the second thing, then you'll probably be one of the best in the world at the combination of the two. So very few people think in that way, but mixing and matching and combining really help you figure out what you could be good at pivoting at, which is why I'm trying to get good at other artistic areas, because then that might help my pivot in writing, for instance, if I can be good or even a little bit good at some other areas or learn about other areas of, artistic expression.
You've interviewed hundreds of people on your shows. What do you think peak performers do differently when they hit pivot points that maybe other people don't, in addition to the adjacent possible, which I love?
I think very important is they find a mentor. Either, and I don't mean that like a Yoda style mentor or anything. Like, sometimes it means just reading a really good book or a set of books and being inspired by people. It could be a virtual mentor. Like, someone could say, oh, I'm really inspired by Richard Branson or Amy Schumer or Elon Musk, and I'm going to kind of model my career after them. I think, so then they really start to say, okay, well, if I want to be, let's just take stand-up as an example and take Amy Schumer as a virtual mentor. I've never met her or spoken to her. Well, but I could listen to 50 podcasts she's done. I can see her movie. I can read all the interviews she's done. I can see the 3 seasons of her show, and then I can read all these books about stand-up comedy, and I could sort of divide up all the skills that are needed. Well, you need a skill in telling a joke. You need to understand what a joke is. You need performance skill. You need timing skill. Which it might be, that in itself might be broken down into a bunch of skills. You need kind of a psychological skill at dealing with failure. So at this DJ class, I've only taken one, so it's not like I'm speaking like a professional DJ. But one thing the guy said that I thought was weird, but then he explained it. He said, a real DJ, you're not a real DJ until you've cleared the floor. And I didn't understand what that meant. Like, I thought, isn't it good to have people on the floor dancing? And he said, yes, but a real DJ will always be experimenting and trying new stuff off of the things he's already learned. But if he tries enough new stuff, and if he's taking enough risk, you have to take enough risks, at some point, he will clear the floor. People will not be interested in what he's doing. And then he has that experience, that sweaty palm, nervous, panicky experience of, how do I get people back on the floor? And so a real DJ will have been through that, probably many times. So that's probably true in every area of life. And I think that's probably true of pivoting, is that there's this gap between where you want to be and where you are now. So when you're trying to close that gap, at some point, you're going to quote unquote clear the floor, and you have to figure out, get that psychological skill of coming back. It happens to me now. I've been writing for 25 years, almost every day. And it still happens to me. I'll write something and I'll put it out there and I'll think, ugh, this is horrible. And I'll see nobody engages with it and I don't like it. And you would think I could have stopped myself before putting it out there, but I didn't know, because you don't always know what's good and what's bad if you're trying new things. But it feels horrible when it happens, and you just have to keep going. You have to get beyond the psychology of it. So when I was very young, I was 17, I was a young and up and coming chess master in my teenage years, and when I lost a game or a tournament, I would be devastated. I never got over that, actually, and consequently I never really got better. So that stopped me in that potential career. I had to pivot out of that. Fortunately, because chess players don't make any money, but I definitely had to pivot out of that because I couldn't handle the psychology. I was too young, probably.
It's so fascinating. I love this idea of you have to clear the floor
You
and
have to
take
clear-
enough risks to do that.
Yeah, a real DJ knows how to clear the floor.
I wrote a piece for Fast Company. Hopefully they'll accept it about your career plateau is not a problem. And the reason I say that is that you have to hit a plateau. Plateau means you've arrived. It means you were successful in whatever the thing you were doing. So when people have this restless, bored, antsy feeling, it's actually usually, and probably for anyone listening to this show, more a product of their success than not.
Well, it's an interesting thing, though, because I think a career plateau can't be sustained.
No,
Like,
you wouldn't want to stay there.
You're either going to end up keep moving
But to
up.
not take it personally.
Yeah, or
that
you're going to
there.
get depressed. Like,
Yes,
oh, I'm
absolutely.
not moving. Like,
Absolutely.
the nature of the universe is chaos. Like, we're always
Yes.
in motion. So you can't, I think a great example is looking at a river. It always sort of looks the same, but from one second to the next, it's never the same. So, and that's like a career. Like from the outside, people should see, oh, this person's always trying new things, always doing things like this rushing river. But the reality is to that person, it's constant struggle, constant learning, constant questioning, constant trying at least small experiments, like you say. And that's how you build, the river, ultimately, the career.
One of the things we haven't talked about, which I think is one of your greatest strengths and assets, is your network, who you know and the relationships you build, and even who you get on your podcast. What is your approach? And do you agree that this is one of your biggest strengths?
Yeah, I think so. But I think, the funny thing is I look back and it seems like I have a network, but I'm like horrible. So I don't understand actually the nature of my network in the sense that I really am bad at returning phone calls and emails. Like I'm horrible. I'm horrible at it. Like
Once someone knows it's not personal, it's no big deal at all. Like that way I don't feel bad if I'm emailing you for the fifth time and I haven't heard.
Right. Like
I just figure, he'll respond when he's ready.
It's
or
not like I'm
interested.
ignoring anything.
Totally.
What I do is if let's say you email me at 5 a.m, well, I wake up and I figure I'm not going to respond to any emails until I've written and done my thing for the day, like my discipline for the day. But what if it takes me all day to write something? Now I've got 100 new emails. I might have even forgotten somebody sent an email, not for any reason, just memory's bad. And then now we're on to the next day, and then it's gone.
Well, you
I
kind
mean,
of run it
if
like
you-
a river. Like if I just ping at the right time in the flow, it works out. But otherwise, it's just you're someone who I think your network probably learns. Cool. I'll just try when I can, and I'll get a response when it's meant to be.
I hope so, because honestly, I looked at the blurbs on your book, and 4 of them I owe return emails to for months, and so I'm really scared.
It's a great way to have a to-do list. Just
yeah.
look at book blurbs.
Like I wake up sometimes thinking of all of but I don't meet people for dinner or lunch that often. Except for you occasionally at the Gray Dog down the
Yes.
street. I don't, I'm bad at returning phone calls. I never talk on the phone. I can never hear people on the phone. And so I think, but just over the years, whenever I think of an opportunity to help somebody, like, so-and-so should be on Jenny's Pivot podcast, I'll do what I call permission networking. I'll ask you in advance. I'll ask my friend in advance. And then if you both say yes, I'll connect the two of you, and then something's happened. And I'm not even that involved. I had to ask 2 permissions. If you didn't respond, that would be okay. But if everybody responds, because I'm thinking ahead too, a lot of people will say, James, what can I do to help you? That's the worst networking you could do. You just gave me homework. I'm busy enough already. Now I have to think, what is empty in my life that this person who I have no idea what their skill set is, what they could do to help me? Like, I would never do that. I think I know your podcast very well. I know, let's say, the skill set of somebody else very well. I'll already have done the work for you in advance. This is why this person's good for you. This is why Jenny's podcast is good for you. Try to get permission on both sides, then do the introduction. I've done minimal work, but enough that you don't have to do work. And now I've networked 2 people. And a network is not a list of the people you know. And that's like kind of a linear network. A network should be exponential, meaning it's not the connections between me and other people. It's all the connections between all the people I know, because that's exponentially more than just the list of the people I know.
That's what's so incredible about yours. I'm wondering, did you hit a tipping point at any point in the last, say, decade or even 20 years where all of a sudden that exponential growth just skyrocketed and you suddenly had access to just about anyone you could imagine, i.e.
Yeah.
all the people you get on your podcast?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process. So I don't know if there was a tipping point, but I think this was always, rather than the kind of normal skill set of like calling people up, having lunch with them, blah, 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 like the normal networking skill set, by always taking this kind of permission networking skill set and trying to think of ideas in advance for people, I've built, I kind of moved up at my corporate job because of that, by, networking with people in different divisions of HBO, for instance. I mean, I was a computer programmer at HBO who happened to also be working on a TV show there. And that's how I was able to do it. Then I was able to leverage that into building a company for entertainment, building a company that built websites for entertainment companies, because I started meeting people at all the different entertainment companies and, oh, you need a website. Here's a programmer, and starting to put all that together. And then just more and more with everything I did, I was able to do that. And sometimes it's embarrassing. Like, I remember when I was trying to sell Stock Picker, I called up the head of business development at Yahoo, and his name was Toby, I forget his name, honestly, Toby something. And this was 2006, so 10 years ago. And he gets on the phone with me, and I'm like, oh man, I got on the phone with the head of business development at Yahoo. And he's like, yeah, James, you owe me $100,000. And I'm like, how come? I don't even know you. And he said, yeah, you do. You pitched me and I invested in that business 6 years ago, the wireless software business. And I'm like, ugh. And he's like, but no worries. And then he brought me in, and Yahoo almost bought my company. So, eventually, good and bad, if you're well-intentioned, if you're not hurting anybody and you're well-intentioned, it all works out in the end. If you're always trying to provide value, whether it's, no matter what happens then, you keep that network growing and growing and growing. And so now the network I have leverages off of, I'll give you another example. I've had Mark Cuban on my podcast. Well, back in 1997, before broadcast.com, then called AudioNet, was thinking of going public, I was doing a website for a TV show called The People's Court, where Ed Koch was the judge, and they were going to stream it live while it was being filmed. Well, AudioNet was about to go public, or broadcast.com was about to go public, and they wanted the job of doing the streaming. So I gave it to them. So that's how I knew Mark Cuban. Then 20 years later, he was on my podcast. So everything kind of, what goes around comes around.
Do you do anything to follow up with the people who come on your show to keep building those relationships?
No, because they don't forget, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember one time, so Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, he came on my
book.
Yeah, great book, great movie,
Yes.
with Matt Damon. And Andy Weir self-published that, so it was a great self-publishing success story. And then I think Random House picked it up. But anyway, he came on the podcast, and this was early in The Martian's success as a book. So I think now it'd probably be really hard to get him. It's been a superstar movie, but I remember he came on, and then I didn't follow up with him or anything. It was just a fun podcast, like I was a fanboy. And then a few months later, there was news they might have found water on Mars. And so that minute, I sent him an email. How would this have affected the outcome in your book if they found water on Mars? And within seconds, he wrote back a detailed response back. And it's just, people don't really forget. Like if they forget, then it wasn't really a good networking connection anyway.
Yeah, great point.
And, but realistically though, if I was I know networkers far better than me, and they're unbelievably incredible. And their network honestly makes them like hundreds of millions of dollars. If I was really like one of those people, I would be going on vacations with the people who are on my podcast. I'd be going to their weddings. I'd be going out to dinner every night. I'd be introducing them every day to people. Like I've seen super networkers in action, and they're far superior to me.
Anyone who's read Choose Yourself knows about your daily practice. Can you walk us through what a day in the life of James Altucher, now in Manhattan, looks like?
Yeah. So the important thing about this daily practice, as I describe in Choose Yourself, is not that it just, and this is related to the pivoting, it's not that it just kind of keeps me creative and healthy on a daily basis. It's when things are bad, I know if I just stick to this, then I'll bounce back fast. And I've seen this, bad things happen to everybody all the time. Like you could get, doesn't matter how rich or happy or whatever or successful you are, bad things are going to happen. You could go from rich to being poor. Your business could fail. You could lose your wife and horrible things. A death in the family could happen. You could get sick. But it's important to have a toolkit to be able to bounce back from these bad things in life. And several bad things have happened to me just in the past, let's say, year or 2 years. So the first thing is physical. You can't ever pivot or bounce back or succeed if you're not healthy.
I agree.
So then, and that just doesn't mean like be like, super ripped at the gym. It just means eating well, which we all basically know what that means. Sleeping well, we all basically know what that means. It's common sense. And movement, like, don't just sit around all day, which is what I'm prone to do. Like, I like to sit around all day, but get out as much as possible. So that's the physical part. Then there's the emotional part. Just be around good people and people who are good for you. That doesn't mean be selfish. And if someone needs you, you say, no, you're bad now. Get off my shoe. But it means in general, try to be around people who inspire you, that move you up. But also you could be around people who are good and you can help. And it doesn't have to be selfish. Be creative every day. That's super important because creativity is a muscle and you have to exercise it. And finally, be grateful every day. So you have two choices of how to look at a situation. You can either complain about it or you can be grateful for it. So if I'm stuck in traffic going into the city, I can either say, ugh, I'm going to be late for everything. Why is there this traffic? Or I can say, wow, I'm in the most amazing city in the planet and everyone else wants to be in here and I'm going in here too. So, I call that a difficult gratitude problem. So you always try to be grateful for even like the bad things that are happening to you. And if you could do that every single day, those 4 things, physical, emotional, creative, grateful, then you're going to I find I bounce back so fast from bad things. I mean, and every week bad things happen. So you're always in a period of pivoting or bouncing back or whatever you want to call it.
And we know the concept of decision fatigue, that actually when you're grappling with big pivot questions, your brain just doesn't have as many resources for worrying about the small stuff. And so I even say too, don't even bother trying to pivot if you don't have some of your physical fundamentals set.
No, it's so true. Like I had this happen last week. Someone that I work very closely with was very upset at me and like was sent like a nasty email to me. And he didn't even realize maybe that I was so, why the ways in which it was hurtful. And I could have chosen to either kind of like dwell on, oh, well, I need to send this email back. Or I could have said, look, let's just get back to, okay, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to be around someone who's positive for me instead of dwelling on someone who's negative for me. And I'm going to be grateful of all the opportunities I have of having had this human in my life for so long. So, and that allows me to bounce back faster. Like it's on a micro level, it works.
So those are the categories. Walk us through the structure. How much time do you spend? What do you do first thing in the morning?
Yeah. So I'll wake up. And I wake up very early because I'll go to sleep around 9, wake up around 5, so 8 hours. And then after cleaning, a little exercise, and so on, I usually have a coffee and then I'll write. Writing's the most important thing to me to get done. And the brain is most active between 2 and 4 hours after you wake up. So if you wake up at 5, between 7 and 9, your brain's gonna be at its peak level. So that's what I'm trying to write.
That's so interesting because it does take me about 2 hours to get ramped up in the morning, and I didn't know the science behind that.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter.
And have tea.
It doesn't even matter if
so
you're a night
slow.
person or an early person. Like if you want to do something creative, try to do it between 7 and 9, between 2 hours after you wake up. If you want to do it at night, take a big nap during the afternoon. At night, other things are important. Like you believe it or not, like around 5 in the afternoon, you can run faster than when you first wake up in the morning. So there's different things that happen to the body and the brain during the day, no matter what. But and it's probably a little different for each person, but that's in general.
And how long do you write?
I'll write until I've written. So, because often you sit there and you can't think of stuff to write, or you write something that's bad and you don't like it, and you write the next thing. So, before I came here today, I wrote.
So when you say write till you've written, till you have a complete blog post, let's say.
Yeah, a blog post or an article or a chapter in a book or something.
And what's the range of time that might take?
If I'm feeling good and have a lot of energy, it could take 20 minutes or it could take 9 hours. So It just depends. I write until I've written. But that usually means before then, I usually read quite a bit. So between like, let's say 6 and 7, I might read for an hour, just to get inspired to write and get those voices in my head of somebody who's really good and artistic and how they write and learn from it. And then I'll start writing. And then after that, I'll start, interacting with people I like in my life, friends or colleagues or whatever. So it's the emotional side. So now so it's already like around noon. I've taken care of some emotional, some creative, or most of the creative. And then the rest of the day I try to enjoy. So I try to take care of business stuff, let's say from like noon to 3, and that's maybe some phone calling or meetings or whatever. And business stuff, believe it or not, is the easy stuff. Like just agreeing, hey, we'll do this deal, or I'll work with you on this. That's kind of, or checking up on how's this activity going, or what do these numbers look like this month. That's kind of the easy stuff. That's just like, okay, I had to check the box on that. It's not like hard creative stuff. And then I try to enjoy the rest of the day and be with people I love and be grateful for it, and so on. That's an ideal day.
Yeah.
Not every day.
We have such a similar day structure. It's amazing.
That's good. Well,
Yeah.
It does. Unfortunately,
That's why
not
we
every
can meet
day.
up. We can converge at Grey Dog.
Exactly. And then we can meet
day.
here at 10:30 and do podcasts and
Yes.
stuff. This is part of the creative, transitioning into business part of the day.
I said to James today, we're recording on a Monday, and I said, I can't think of a better way to make Monday better than by starting with doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And seeing you and hanging out, just talk and shop.
And now what I'm excited about is we're going to stay here, and I'm going to interview you for your podcast. So after you listen to this, I don't know when your podcast will come out, but
September
maybe
6th.
So
launch day.
So okay, so
you get the honors.
I get to be on your launch day. So this will come out the same day, and I will switch over to your podcast, and I'll be interviewing you about your book Pivot and how you've pivoted and what the book's about and everything. So Jenny, thanks for doing this bonus episode about pivoting for the James Altucher Show, and you'll have to come on again. And thank you.
Thank you, James. It's been such an honor to get to ask you all the questions this time.
I enjoyed it.
Big thanks to all the listeners for having me as your guest host today.
Excellent.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network at jamesaltucher.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
Hey, thanks for listening. Listen, I have a big favor to ask you, and it'll only take 30 seconds or less, and it would mean a huge amount to me. If you like this podcast, please let me know. Please let the team I work with know. Please let my guests know, and you can do this easily by subscribing to the podcast. It's probably the biggest favor you could do for me right now, and it's really simple. Just go to iTunes, search for The James Altucher Show, and click subscribe. Again, it will only take you 30 seconds or less, and if you subscribe now, it will really help me out a lot. Thanks again.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. Oracle.com/advance.